And this year, we want to have a safe carnival, just like every other carnival. So this year, we're talking a smart carnival. We're talking safety measures against real threats. We're going to vet smart, we're going to play smart, and move smart, because it's all about rum, gal, and money. Not that don't call way, no time for folly. We jamming all day. Jamming on the roadway. If you see me in a Benz or a Beamer, hustle hard for me.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Everybody from 40 onwards
should be screened. As you get older, the incidence of cancer rises in men, and you do screening examinations to see if you could pick up the cancer early o'clock, so we could treat it and cure the patient.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
WESN.
Good morning. This is AM Prime on WSN. Sean Michael Small here, filling in for my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, normally the host of the show. Fortunately, he's a bit under the weather, so I'm just standing in. And as we wait for our first guest, allow me to introduce a little bit of talking point here and just remark what a different experience this is to host AM Prime. It's not necessarily the first period I've hosted AM Prime, but it's interesting to see that despite everything that's going on, the Savannah has quite a lot of subscribers looking to, get fit for Carnival, or hopefully just are doing it in general for their own health. It gives the city of Port of Spain a bit of energy. It makes me wonder if we'll ever reach that point where we'll turn into a city that never sleeps. Some might lament if that actually happens, that there isn't time to shut down and unwind. However, there's a part of me that thinks that would be a sign of greater economic activity in the country. And it'll be interesting to see if we could ever get there, as this Carnival period has the entire capital lit up. It's a different experience driving to work these early hours of the morning. However, our first guest is with us via Zoom. Of course, he's quite an outspoken gentleman, former president of the PSA, political leader of the PDP, and a member of the Tobago House of Assembly. I am speaking, of course, of one Mr. Watson Duke. Good morning, sir. Welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, WSN.
Well, Mr. Duke, so the most recent public opinion that we got from you was with regards to the question of autonomy. Autonomy is one of those phrases, I guess you could say, that has to some of us turned almost into buzzwords. It means so many different things, and it encompasses a lot of different concepts of what it can mean for Tobago, a lot of different details that need to be worked out, some of which I'm not even too sure that has been worked out in finer details. But you've made an interesting point and taken the conversation in a different direction, saying, well, as we're having this conversation, what Tobago needs right now is not just the autonomy legislation, but self-determination to actually decide what direction Tobago wants to go in to forge its future, to set itself up for the future. Self-determination to stay with Trinidad and in what form, or potentially even to go off on its own. Is that correct?
You have spoken correctly, sir.
Well, I want to ask, Mr. Duke, what exactly led you to come to this point, to make the statement? Because I think you're the first person, at least in a while, that I know of, that has made this statement publicly to mention the fact of full independence. Usually when autonomy is spoken of, at least by the politicians previously within the last 3 or 4 years, I have heard not full independence, just autonomy. What made you want to take that extra step?
All right, it has been the cry of the ancestors of Tobago, and it is the cry of Tobagonians. We depend in Tobago for those who speak for us, and that is the politicians. The politicians, they are not too much interested in self-determination because they cannot make that argument. It's beyond their capacity to make the argument and to deliver. But being a skilled negotiator, being someone who has been in the belly of the beast, which is the governance of this country, I understand when it is a time to strike, and you strike when the iron is hot. You do not strike when the iron is cold. Now we have the iron, proverbially speaking, being hot. Now is the time for us to define exactly what we want, which is self-determination. And to put it to you quite candidly, all that is being said that they want to give to Tobago, I have no problem with that. Save and accept, somewhere in that bill, you must put the bill that Tobago is an island of equal status with Trinidad. That must move out of the preamble and go into the act of itself, into the substantive issue of the Constitution. That is in the preamble. We want to have squarely in the Constitution that Tobago will be of equal status with the island of Trinidad. And upon the passage of this bill, Tobago will have the right automatically for self-determination. You could then go on and qualify how self-determination can be pursued by the people of Tobago, and that is up for discussion. That's not hard and fast. But self-determination of itself is an international, is a cardinal principle based on international law that allows a people that was held in subjugation by a foreign power, all right, or by an imperial power to decide for themselves without any external influence their political status, which is more than just independence. They could decide whether they want integration, as we have in Trinidad and Tobago. We have no problem with that. They can decide if they want an association as the eastern states of the Caribbean, eastern Caribbean states, or the European Union, that's an association, or the Organization of American States, that's an association. Or they can decide if they want independent, like Grenada, like St. Vincent, St. Lucia, etc. But it is the right of those people to hold themselves accountable for their future. In addition, self-determination also gives Tobago the right to decide for itself again, without any external influence, their own economic, social, and cultural development. Those are the hallmarks of development. You must be allowed to make those decisions.
Well, one of the things you said at the beginning was that Tobago be seen as an equal to Trinidad. Do you have any particular details on what that means? Because I understand that Tobago, being a whole different island, there is automatically going to be differences in how it needs to be run than, say, how a section of Trinidad needs to be run, just because you can't drive to Tobago. You have to have a sea bridge, you have to have a ferry. It makes logistics more complicated. Tobago is not so easily integrated into whatever network you lay down in Trinidad. It needs to have, in many cases, its own network because it's its own island. But what legally do you mean, or with regards to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, that definition, what exactly are you looking for when you say equal status?
All right. Tobago currently now is a ward of Trinidad. Tobago has been a ward of Trinidad since 1889, and that status did not change when we became independent. that status of a war did not change when we became a Republican status. All right? Those were opportunities when Trinidad could have said, we no longer want Tobago to be a ward, we want Tobago to be of equal status. Tobago was sold to Trinidad for small change, pocket change, as if we were a slave. Remember, long before you and I lived, our ancestors were around, and it never, ever involved the Tobago House of Assembly, nor the people of Tobago. Prior to 1889, there was 1876. That was the last year the Constitution of Tobago existed. In that year, after a war broke out in Tobago, a riot, so to speak, and the island was captured by the slaves, so to speak, the Queen in that year, the riot took place in May 1st to May 5th. They seized the entire island. They had to get a warship coming from Barbados, a naval fleet, to suppress the war and control the place. After that, the Queen of England then lost hope in the House of Assembly and repealed the Tobago Constitution and imposed Crown Colony rule. Eventually, they dismissed the Tobago House of Assembly altogether, not even Crown Colony, and they lump us with Trinidad, where they had also control. That is important. We never decided then. For small money, Trinidad bought us for small money. And they're not only bought, they paid small money to the transfer from an island state by itself to now an island ward, a ward of Trinidad. Then in 1962, when Dr. Rick Williams and Capildeo went to England to seek independence, they did not involve Tobago. Tobago was not consulted. There was no system in place by which Tobago could have been consulted and said, well, hey, what do you all want? In the case of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, they got independence around the same time. And they were consulted by Jamaica. Jamaica said, hey, we are going for independence. We know that we share the same governor. We are going for independence. What do you want? They said, we prefer to stay with Britain. And they stayed with Britain. They were in a similar relationship, except not being a ward, of course. They had a House of Assembly, the Cayman Islands. Jamaica had their own parliament with a governor supervising both islands. But they were consulted. Tobago was not consulted in 1962. In 1976, Tobago was not consulted again because Tobago was a part of Trinidad, as a county council. We had nothing to say that Tobago should be consulted. Well, and up to now, Tobago continue being a part of Trinidad, not as an island, but as a ward. Let me tell you now what it means to be of equal status. It means that the two seats in Tobago, the east and the west, now becomes equal to 39 seats. And it's no longer a situation where Trinidad could bully Tobago into saying, we have the most votes, so we could do anything we want. We could make Tobago an island for donkeys or for sheep or for goat, and forget that. Let everybody come to live in Trinidad. Right now, the parliament in Trinidad is organized in such a manner that Tobago only has two voices, two votes. And with all the might and all the eloquence we have, we cannot bring equity to the discussion. Self-determination allows us to have equity, because unless we participate and unless we vote, they cannot do with Tobago as they play.
Mr. Duke, I can understand the desire for self-determination to make a decision for the future, but from what you just said, are you asking for that the parliamentary voting power of Tobago representatives equal to the voting power of all of the representatives of Trinidad? Is that basically what you're asking for?
Self-determination allows that. Self-determination all times will allow Tobago and Trinidad to enter into a relationship, an integrated relationship. So we'll continue to be Tobago and Trinidad. But when we enter into the relationship with self-determination, we now have a right to determine what is good for Tobago and what is not good. If we are not happy with what is good for Tobago, we can therefore leave the relationship. And that, to me, is quite important for Tobagonians, to always have the right to leave a relationship which is not honorable, but dishonorable.
Well, Mr. Duke, but that technically is two different things. You could have the capacity to independently decide we want to break away.
Yes.
But the voting, I mean, the concept of the voting power in Parliament, while I understand and I lament the fact that Tobago only has 2 MPs, I don't think there's necessarily an easy fix, because to some extent, as long as Tobago, in whatever form, is a part of the joint state of Trinidad and Tobago, you can't then turn and have 60,000 people have significantly more, a larger voice out of proportion to the other 1,340,000 citizens of the country. So I understand that Tobago at times feels disrespected, and in some ways, changing the status from ward is one way to remove some of the disrespect, some of the disrespectful labels. But on a practical level, while giving Tobago more voice in Parliament, I would agree with, I've even called for, and perhaps the Senate might be the easiest solution until we have constitutional reform.
Yeah.
To change the voting power of the House of Representatives, which to some extent is based on the number of people you represent. I don't know if that would be practical. It would just flip the situation in reverse almost and just give us a different problem.
I'm glad you raised a point. We are not saying we have more power than Trinidad. To be of equal status with Trinidad cannot be taken as cosmetic only. It has to be in form and substance. Therefore, whenever a bill is being brought for Trinidad and Tobago, remember we are now coming to the negotiating table. We're now coming to the relationship as an island, right? And we are ward currently, so whatever the island says, we go with that. If they say speed limit in Tobago is 5 kilometers, we have no choice. We are a ward. They speak legally, they're entitled to do us what they want. And they have been doing that. We are saying now the time has come. We don't want to be a ward. Now the time has come. We want to be of equal status. So when we go into the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, the and make us equal with Trinidad, not superior. Not superior, but equal. The laws must be of such balance that it must affect Tobago positively as it does for Trinidad. You can't tell us, okay, we want to have a tax for, let's say, property tax. We want to have property tax for Trinidad and Tobago, and we are not the same. The lands in Tobago are of a different nature compared to the lands in Trinidad.
Well, with autonomy, wouldn't you theoretically, one of the things for autonomy, which I actually do agree with, the degree is where maybe the details needs to be worked out. Yeah. But having your own laws, because I understand what you're saying, having your own laws so that the circumstances are going to be a little bit different, they're not going to be the same, right? There might be some laws, particularly with regards to dealing with foreign governments and stuff, that might be a little bit trickier to work out. But for the most part, you could have that under autonomy. I don't know if necessarily, again, changing Parliament would work as opposed to just saying, well, the THA, whatever legislative body that governs Tobago will be able to deal with the local laws of Tobago. There's precedent for that around the world with local laws as opposed to national level laws, and we could adjust it.
Well, what you're talking about is what we are resisting. We do not want that type of autonomy. We want all our rights, and so when we enter into the Trinidad and Tobago relationship, we enter with all our rights. The right to agree with a national law and the right not to agree with a national law. If we do not agree with a national law, then that is a law for Trinidad, not a law for Trinidad and Tobago.
I assume that my assumption would be if you could write your own laws, they would have that caveat. So traffic laws, criminal laws, you all could adopt what Trinidad adopts or modify it as you see fit or discard it. I would assume that should be on the table if you're saying Tobago could make its own laws.
Yes, but we are going beyond that. You see, you cannot have Tobago making laws and Trinidad not making laws. As it is good for the goose, it is good for the gander. We are talking equity here. So therefore, what we are saying is that, hey, Trinidad and Tobago, they are now equal status, and so therefore both of them could determine their political status. Both of them can determine their economic, cultural, and social status, right? Cultural, social status. They can determine that. It is wrong to think that Tobago must now seek permission from Trinidad to make laws. Because unless the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago agrees, then there is no law for Trinidad and Tobago. And autonomy allows us not to ask Trinidad anymore for rights. We sit down and we discuss as equal partners without anyone outvoting the next. Whatever agreement is made out of mutual respect. So therefore, as you were saying, when coming to making laws for Tobago, Tobago doesn't want that for itself, right? Neither does Trinidad want that for itself. If Tobago can make laws, then Trinidad must also make laws for itself. Because Trinidad laws cannot be Trinidad and Tobago laws. Trinidad laws must be Trinidad laws, Tobago laws must be Tobago laws. And Trinidad and Tobago laws must be agreed mutually by the 2 seats in Tobago and the 39 seats in Trinidad. That's how the governance works. It's straightforward. It's a higher form of government. It bends towards democracy. That is what the world is moving towards. Democracy. Democracy. And democracy has to be done in a dignified manner where all parties are respected.
I mean, I understand that, but one of the tricky parts about democracy is, you know, depending on how you define it, some people might say, well, one man, one vote, which is why you don't always have a one man, one vote situation, because then Tobago will have less votes than the aggregate of Trinidad. So I understand the call for democracy. I get that. It's just the problem is, on a practical level, I would see it as a problem trying to figure out a way to make Tobago equal, where it could actually have what I believe you are implying without causing a situation where you just make another or different imbalance in Parliament. And instead of the big island holding the little island hostage, now you could have the little island holding the big island hostage.
No. It can't happen. Because that, what we're speaking about, self-determination, belongs to both Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad has been exercising their self-determination from day one. Recently, they decided to exercise it again when they said we are going to have an inter-Caribbean boat to Barbados, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago. We were not part of that conversation in Tobago. We were not a part of it. We are not allowed to have the CARICOM boat pass and drop off goods and then go to Trinidad. We don't have it here. The boat comes to Trinidad. All our cars must go to Trinidad and then come back up. All our goods must go to Trinidad and come back up because Trinidad is the island. We are the world. What we are asking for is equity, not just equality, equity. At the end of the day, we all should be equal, not insofar as size, but insofar as vote, insofar as opportunity for development, economic development, social development, cultural development. Well, at the end of the day, each island must plan its own political and determine its own political status. Trinidad can do that, not Tobago.
Well, Mr. Duke, I'm sorry, but we're more or less out of time for this interview. I'd like to thank you for joining us, of course. It's an interesting direction to take the conversation, one, though, that I think has a lot of different implications that needs to be unpacked, but we'll have to have that conversation in the future. Thank you, Mr. Duke.
Thank you so much, sir. Nice.
All right, folks, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears now with regards to still sticking to the politics, but we'll be speaking to a different political party on different issues. Stay tuned to talk to AM Prime on WSN. Your content capital. Will be right back.
Like many others trying to save on Carnival, Gabby thought she should go for 50% off makeup.
What about the other side? Well, Daisy 50% off offer. So, you know.
No makeup artist we don't know. What we do know is the savviest savings for Carnival are at KFC. Get a Jab Jab box, 1-piece chicken, 1 regular fries, and a biscuit for only $25.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, the show that is often imitated, never duplicated. I almost confused that line. We are joined, of course, by the Public Relations Officer of the UNC, Mr. Dr. Kirk Mayhew. Dr. Mayhew, thank you for joining me. A bit short notice here to have an interesting conversation this morning.
It's my pleasure, and good morning to you and your viewers.
So I say interesting because, of course, the opposition leader, she has used her platform to hold crime talks. I find it very interesting and intelligent that there's not one political signage to be seen, not one political flag, no drums or whistles or what have you. I do think it's smart messaging subliminally. First, before we get into the talks, I just need to ask, are the crime talks between the opposition and the government dead in the water?
Not for us, but the Prime Minister, as soon as the Prime Minister says he agrees to go to the talks and or those issues of clarification are addressed, when we hear from him, he didn't respond to the letter, and he keeps quite distastefully shouting to the media that he doesn't have to be at any crime talks. Yet he goes to the U.S. and will meet with officials there or meet with energy officials. But crime and ordinary citizens for him aren't important. But the talks are still on the table. And I mean, what these anti-crime town hall meetings are showing, I mean, the people's just desperate desire to be heard, you know. I remember the first night in La Jolla, we just didn't have space, and people were clamoring outside. There were more people outside than inside, and things were actually getting a bit unruly. And so I was asked to go outside and speak to the people there. So I went there, and people were very upset, and and they were telling me they want to, talk about, when they were, what happened to them and what could be done. And I really got the sense that they weren't angry just because they didn't get a seat and they wanted to get in. It was a real yearning to have the voices heard because nobody is hearing them. So many people have been affected by crime so profoundly, and it seems like nobody cares. And finally, they have a voice. Finally, somebody cares. And, I could just feel that. That is what they so desperately wanted and what they were so upset that they couldn't speak, and we have so many people, we just have to keep cutting it off, but we take everybody's information, we write it down, we're collating it all for our own proposals to give to the government and also for when we return to government as well. But this is, it really provides a voice for the voiceless, and you just really feel it when you're there.
I mean, I did say before the first meeting, it was in San Juan, correct?
Yeah, well, it was La Jolla.
La Jolla, sorry. Before that first meeting, I did say, I think it might have been the show just before, so it could have been the morning of, for the public, and I did ask, even if you're not a supporter of the UNC, not to go there do political rally and support and whatever, but to go there to talk, to have a platform. Hopefully things will come out of it. Now, of course, I understand it's the nature of the thing. You can't get away from the politics at the end of the day, right? I did find it interesting that the government's response was a political rally, which was the very opposite to what the opposition leader held. But at the same time, though, to what extent are you confident that you would be able to formulate meaningful policy? Because right now we have anecdotal, situations, and of course there's a lot of emotion behind it. And I do think that a lot of our issues are things that you and I don't know. Maybe you might know from past experience, but a lot of the details even you won't know because it's what's going on currently, the challenges with regards to administration and resources and a whole host of and weaknesses and specific weaknesses in legislature. Are you confident that do you have a team maybe that's taking all of these experiences of the citizens to try to figure out, maybe a list of what to prioritize, of where to look at the changes or specific policies you already might have in mind?
Definitely. I mean, that's really the purpose of these talks. And that's what we wanted to do with the government. But, then they were saying they want 5 people on the committee and we'll have 4. And then we vote in that skewed committee as to who could be brought on. And I mean, we wanted as broad an input as possible because there are so many people. We had a clinical psychologist on giving a talk, right? A short presentation. We had someone from the Hunters and Search and Rescue Team. We of course we had Gary Griffith. We had a forensic pathologist, Professor Daisley. I mean, people from all walks of life, and we are deliberately going all around the country and getting people who have expertise, and there are a lot of people with expertise, and not just the ones that, the criminologists that the media would go to. They're important, but there are many, many, many people, and that is what we want to get on board, and that is what we are prioritizing. We have recorded everything, we have written down everything, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're collating them, because remember, we have a track record that we're proud of. Right? In 1995, when we got into government, in 2010, when we got into government, there were crises. In 1995, I remember it was a record. We never had, I believe it was 145 murders at the time. That was, we never had that before, 159, something like that. It had crossed 100 for the first time, and it was a national issue, and that's what pushed the UNC into government that year, and we brought it down to under 100. And then in 2010 again we implemented policies and brought the crime rate down, and we are looking to do that again, and we know that political will is so important. And just as an example, when we asked the government about compensation for the pariah families, then he went off in his rant in Parliament shouting that there's a process, there's a process, there's a process. And obviously he has no political will. When he wants to give $100 million to either lawyers or to any program at the drop of a hat that's not approved by Parliament, he just announces it. He does that, and he does it on a political platform, not even in Parliament.
I want to hold off on pariah. So one of the things
political will, yeah.
I understand that. And I think one of the problems is this situation has led the door open now. There are people who might disagree with certain speakers, and I've gotten that feedback on my own show, Talking Points, from my callers. And I get it, but my thing is, and I'll go into this more in the show, but to have the conversation with you, to put it simply, the door is open for people to speak, whether we like to hear what they have to say or not, whichever personality it is. But I do want to ask, because some people might take the implied meaning that y'all are waiting to bring these thoughts to the table. Y'all are waiting to implement it if you get re-elected. Will the the fruits of this endeavor be published to the public, you know, not as a campaign political tool, but as soon as possible so that the debate could happen. Obviously, it's going to be within the election cycle because we have an election next year. But as soon as possible to try to get the conversation rolling, whether there is, you know, collaboration or not, and perhaps with more avenues for disseminating that throughout the media, whether it's print, television, radio, be utilized. I know you have your own platform on social media, that is to say the party. Of course, this is going through the opposition leader's Facebook page. But will other mediums be used and get the conversation rolling? Because I feel as though part of it is if the government doesn't feel that people want something specific, you know, and it's not voiced, and that voice isn't wide and carried far so that it's undeniable, you know, it's not really going to get anywhere.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. Obviously, this is going to be part of our policy and platform, but I think definitely having something put out sooner before our full manifesto comes out, where we summarize and have a concrete program together for the media, for wider discussion, for submission to the government, I think is an excellent idea, which we definitely will follow up on. I think that is the very, very necessary and crucial following step to this.
One of the things with these talks, one of my callers on Talking Point asked me, with regards to getting information on where they're being held and when next they're being held. I assume, of course, the social media is going to have some of it, but where could they find this information? And do you potentially have the dates for maybe the next one or two talks or further that you could announce now, just so people could hear who's interested?
Well, the next one, we sort of plan them one after the other, so we don't have the full roster right now because, you know, sorting the venue, etc., is that kind of takes some time. But the next one we do have planned is on the 19th of February, and that should be in the Chaguanas Central area.
Okay.
Right, so we had the first one in La Jolla, second one in San Fernando, and then so the third one will be Chaguanas Central, and we will be taking it all over the country. And but that's a good suggestion that we will raise to the planning team that perhaps we should do maybe 2-3 dates in advance to be made public. But so I think that's a good suggestion. And again, you know, I like this feedback. It's very productive and useful feedback. And this is exactly like during the crime talks. There's some things people raise that you know, some details which we have, you know, not such in-depth information, or sometimes some ideas that might have missed us, and people keep bringing it up, and we keep taking notes, and this is. You know, this is really the philosophy and method of the UNC. We always go out to the people because there's so much wisdom that we do not tap into this country. Well, so much collective intelligence.
I just spoke to Mr. Duke from Tobago, so I don't want to make Tobago feel left out. They have a different situation, right? It's not quite the same. It's still alarming. It'll pose different challenges. So will you all potentially take one of these talks at some point to Tobago?
We may do so. As you said, I mean, in the Tobago situation, their murder rate is much, much lower, you know, thankfully. But even for Tobago, relatively speaking, it has, you know, accelerated and increased, and that's not a good thing. So, so we certainly are considering a Tobago venue, and when we plan out in future and we have the list, we will see there. But as I said, right now we don't have all the venues for the locations secured as yet, and we don't want to make an announcement before a venue is secured, obviously.
Of course. So okay, now let's get into Paria, because I do find this situation, it's a bit of, from my perspective, it's a good news, bad news situation. The good news, we got the Commission of Inquiry report, which you know, the practical realist in me somewhat doubted that we would ever get that, considering all of the politics around principal people involved in the event. Let's put it that way. But we got it. But however, now we're waiting, I guess. That's the polite way to put it. It's not as though anything has been determined yet, but we're waiting. After a period of 2 years of waiting for the report, now we're waiting for any kind of results. How do you all see it now with regards to the accountability of this whole situation? I find it, yes, nothing egregious necessarily has happened yet, but I do find that the benefit of the doubt, I'm not that willing to wait and see so much anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you know, this is a frustrating thing about following processes when there is no political will, because there's clearly no political will. You know, Keith Rowley is just you know, really, I have to put it this way, you know, disgustingly aggressive with his refusal to act. It is, you know, it is shocking. It is angering. You know, and so, well, I mean, if we think about the process in general, right, we have different levels. We have the political process, which is once every 5 years in terms of voting a government. So that takes a long time. Then we have a parliamentary process of you have debates. Well, we've been doing that, and they've been delaying, but we have it there, but it takes a long time. It took 2 years for us to get this. So, all right, so we have to knock that off in the absence of political will. Well, we have the legal route. You know, there are civil cases that can be made. We could wait for the DPP, and then this is not dependent, or not supposed to be dependent, on the central government, because our judiciary is supposed to be independent from the cabinet. But even that can take long, and as you know, our court system takes, you know, years and years, very often, decades for things to reach fruition. So you have that one knocked off in the official capacity. So you have the political route, well, the parliamentary route, well, elections, parliament, and then legal route, and they're all taking a long time. So what's left is politics, pressure, public pressure. So when those things fail, then we have to put pressure, and
well,
you know,
I know this.
That's what we're left with.
You mentioned the legal route will take some time. I get that. Now, I myself am concerned as well as your party is with regards to the fact that certain individuals got their contract renewed, particularly since the report does not paint them in a good light. Now, I'm not an expert, so I don't know about criminal liability. But my main thing is, I don't know if the details of that, right? So right now, to me, I don't have proof that it's true. I don't have information as to exactly how it was done, why it was done, because sometimes things look bad when there were more, you know, just basic functions. The flip side is, without anything substantial, you can't penalize the individual, unfortunately, right? Fair is fair. So I do have to ask, is there a possibility of a Freedom of Information Act request of information on at least that? You know, here's this individual. He got it allegedly removed, extended before the report came out. I could see a world where that is not necessarily in bad faith, but any pursuit of those details?
Absolutely. Well, again, and I guess this is a bit of political education for people who may not know the details of the process, but we have a process in Parliament before every session starts of parliamentary questions that ministers have to answer. So we will be asking the minister, you know, when were these contracts renewed and why? You know, and so we will be asking whether it's true or not. And so, you know, the Freedom of Information requests take a little while to come in, and hopefully we will get the response directly. It can be either an urgent question or a question on the order paper. So those are some of the technicalities. But we can ask questions in Parliament, which we will do. And if they don't answer, because sometimes they don't, sometimes we ask questions and they give some roundabout answer, and they refuse to in a kind of technical way. So then we have to go for a Freedom of Information Act. That extends the process, but if they're not cooperative in Parliament, that's what we'll have to do. But we'd rather, the quicker way is for us to ask a question and them to answer in Parliament, and that's what we're going to do.
So there was an exchange, I believe, I think it was last week or earlier this week, between some of the members of the opposition and the Prime Minister with regards to the board. To what extent will the opposition be pursuing that? I myself am of two minds of it. They are responsible for overseeing PARIA, and their conduct or their ability to deal with the crisis was somewhat lacking, in my opinion, and it leads to further questions. So, to what extent will the opposition be pursuing that? Could you close in?
Yeah, well, we will be putting political pressure on it. I mean, as Keith Rowley insisted, it is the cabinet's responsibility. We, and again, the UNC introduced this legislation called the Judicial Review Act. That was in '95 in that administration under Prime Minister Pandey, where when a government makes a decision, if you feel that that decision is wrong against the Constitution or against process, we can review it in the courts, and the courts can say whether it was just or not, because there is a conflict of interest, right? So the board, if the company is being, if it's recommended that the company be charged with corporate manslaughter, then you ask the board of that company to act on that report to penalize themselves. That makes no sense. That is a classic conflict of interest. You don't ask the person found guilty whether, what they should do with that report that found them guilty. That is insane. And that just flies in the face of every aspect of natural justice. And so I think that is ripe for a judicial review request. But again, the judicial process can take long. So it's a combination of political pressure, public pressure, and judicial process.
I want to try and sneak in a question. I'll just say, if it's the private sector, I can't imagine a board holding on to their positions in the private sector, all things being equal. But of course, there are various other factors that could be at play that we might not know about. That said, of course, after the Honorable Basil Pandey passed away, one of his last courses, constitutional reform. We're not going to get into all of it, but this particular area with regards to state boards and appointments, could this be one of the things maybe that the opposition takes up? Because I do feel this is an argument to maybe we need to rethink the whole thing, or at least this part of the whole thing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I've been involved in the process for a long time, and really, the service commissions have systematically been underfunded for decades by the PNM because they don't like the service commissions. And what they've done is undermine the public service, have all these state entities where the cabinet directly appoints people, so they have direct political control. And the whole concept of the civil service is to insulate from political control, and the PNM have always been trying to undermine that. Now, when Kamala Prasad-Bissessar was Prime Minister, she made sure that nobody served on more than one board. She did not want this concentration of power. The PNM are total opposite. They have these huge, super technocrats like Noel Garcia and others. The Speaker's husband, Gilbert Peterson, close friends. Yeah, I mean, all these people on 3, 4, 5 boards that become these super technocrats. And that is totally against the type of model we believe is right for governance, where you eliminate these conflicts of interest and these concentrations of power so that you have more democratic control and accountability. So that definitely is. The service commissions and all our state agencies and companies, which have proliferated. So you have the ministry, which is supposed to deal with roads, and then the government makes a roads company. Why? Why are we doing that? Even things like EFCL and so forth that man have put in place We have a ministry that's supposed to build schools, but why do you have a company? These things are just avenues for corruption, and that's what the whole Call the Heart thing was about when the country, was just fed up with the corruption, and they had to do so. Campaign, because all this corruption was done through these state enterprises. So we definitely, instead of relying on one's moral uprightness as we have done, I think we need to codify it in law.
Dr. Mayo, we have to end it there because you have to go. So let me let you leave. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue AM Prime here on WESN. Thank you, Dr. Mayo, so much. We'll be right back after this.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Zira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Tutor backs suspension of Digicel North Secondary School boys. Woodbrook residents' swift action prevents fire spread. A 2-month-old infant girl was discovered unconscious in Santa Cruz on Monday. Regionally, Digicel Holdings Limited completes financial restructuring. Now for the details. Authorities are presently awaiting the results of an autopsy to ascertain the cause of her tragic demise. According to reports, young Azura Roberts was resting in her crib at her family's residence in Beverly Heights Extension in Santa Cruz around 10 a.m. A 33-year-old caregiver responsible for her care at the time stated that after placing her down for a nap, he also succumbed to sleep. Several hours later, around 1 p.m. that same day, he checked on the infant, only to find her unresponsive on the bed with liquid present around her face. The Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association has voiced its support for the suspension of 3 boys from Digicel North Secondary School, citing their actions as justifying disciplinary measures. Tutor President Martin Lumpkin confirmed on Tuesday morning that the boys were indeed placed on suspension. He disclosed that Tutor had communicated with the school to verify the details, learning that one of the 3 boys had completed his suspension but failed to return to school afterwards. Following Education Minister's confirmation of the suspension, many parents have taken to social media platforms to express their dismay, characterizing the punishment as excessively lenient. Residents of Woodbrook displayed quick thinking and community spirit as they formed a bucket brigade to halt the spread of a fire threatening nearby homes. The incident unfolded around 12:47 a.m. when residents detected the scent of smoke and spotted flames engulfing a 2-story building along the road. Promptly raising the alarm, locals mobilized to form a bucket brigade, working tirelessly to contain the blaze while simultaneously alerting the fire services. Authorities reported that the fire's impact was limited to the ground floor of the building. However, the full extent of the damages is yet to be determined. In regional news, Digicel Holdings Limited, along with its subsidiaries, is pleased to announce the successful completion of its consensual financial restructuring and Bermuda schemes of arrangement. This achievement represents a significant milestone for the group as it emerges with a significantly bolstered capital structure, setting the stage for sustained long-term success. In conjunction with the 2023 restructuring of Digicel Group Holdings Limited, the implementation of these schemes has substantially reduced the group's consolidated debt by approximately $1.7 billion. Additionally, the restructuring efforts will result in an annual reduction of approximately $120 million in cash interest expenses. Well, that's it. News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
And this year, we want to have a safe carnival, just like every other carnival. So this year, we're talking a smart carnival. We're talking safety measures against real threats. We're going to fet smart, we're going to play smart, and move smart, because it's all about rum, gal, and money. Not that don't call way, no time for folly. We jamming all day. Jamming on the roadway. If you see me in a Benz or a Beamer, hustle hard for me.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. And a first for me, it's my first Wild Wednesdays. And we're joined by Juan Ricardo Meade and Donna Karam. Good morning.
Good morning.
Our good people from the El Socorro Center of Wildlife Conservation. And you have a very special guest this morning.
Yes, this is our yellow-headed Cara. Her name is Claxton, and she's here today for Wild Wednesday's episode.
So, yellow-headed Cara. This is a native bird to TNT.
Yes, it is.
And so is that like the official species name, or what type of bird? It's a bird of prey, I assume, right?
Yes, it is. It is actually the most common bird of prey here in Trinidad. But normally we don't pay attention to things. But after today's show, many people will be seeing them, and they'll be telling they see these birds all the time. It is the most common bird of prey. So it's a bird of prey. It's in the falcon family. It's actually a falcon. But we associate falcons with speed.
Right.
This one has traded speed and hunting prowess for mental ability.
Okay.
It's agility in its mind. It's a very intelligent and analytical bird. So because it has basically become a scavenger.
Oh, so it doesn't necessarily hunt per se, is that what you're saying?
It hunts, but it hunts as low down. It goes for the lowest hanging fruit.
Okay.
So its favorite food would be baby birds sitting in the nest and the eggs.
Oh, okay.
So that's easy.
Right.
And that is the reason why we will see them and hear them quite often.
So birds like this, because we were having a discussion with regards to, of course, there's quite a few species of birds in our small twin island nation.
Almost 500, which is amazing.
Right.
For world stand. It's amazing. We're a biodiversity hotspot.
One of the few ecotourism activities I know of is bird watching. There were people, at least at some point in time before COVID, who would go to Tobago annually for bird watching, and that's just Tobago.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Trinidad will offer even more diversity when you add the two islands together. So a bird like this, a scavenger, is it that it sort of like evolved this behavior potentially because of the specific environment of our islands? Because our islands aren't that big, right? I would imagine, you know, so it doesn't have as large a range. We're not talking about some continental, landmass.
Well, their behavior is the same throughout their existence throughout the Americas. So they exist in North America and so on. And like I said, it is quite capable of taking down, I would say, small pigeons, young pigeons, but it's just easier and more sensible for it to pick up dead or babies, you know. It's like taking candy from a baby. So that's what it has developed.
You see it all the time. A lion pride would prefer to go after a young calf than to go after a giraffe because those things kick. And this is quite a small bird. There are other predators. Does it have any sort of rival birds in its environment, in its habitat?
Well, they always do. What you would see, you would hear this bird crying. It has a loud cry. Can you make the sound? You want to make the sound for me? All right, doesn't want to make the sound this morning. Well, not yet anyway. But smaller birds go after it.
Really?
Yes, and the reason smaller birds go after it is because of its feeding behavior. He would come into the area and would raid their nests and kill their young and eat their eggs.
Right.
So the smaller birds get together. Once he arrives in an area, in a zone, the alarm call goes out. And all the birds come out and they start chasing him and pecking him on his head and his wings and his feet. And you hear him screaming, "Oh God, leave me alone." And they would chase him out. They would go at him relentlessly. Right. So if it's one or sometimes as many as 10, they would just go at him to get him out of their area. Go somewhere else with your strippiness. We know you come to steal eggs. We know you come to kill our babies. So they go after him. So you would hear this bird. And once you hear this bird's scream, as we like to call it, you'll never forget it. So anytime you go anywhere and you hear that, you'll look out, "Oh my gosh, look." And you'll always see him flying and the smaller birds pecking at him. "Get out, get out, get out." It's an amazing thing.
I mean, its cry actually does not sound unfamiliar.
Right.
Right? It's not one of those, "Oh, what was that?" You know, because it did make a cry while we were waiting.
Right.
Ironically, you were remarking how calm. It's a female. She is?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
How calm she is. So it doesn't have any other predatory birds that competes with it, or
they all compete.
They all compete,
and anybody bigger can usually sometimes potentially take down someone smaller. There's a possibility that she could take down a small pigeon and then be rivaled by like a hawk, and the hawk decides, "Hey, that's an easy. I'll just bully you and take the food."
Generally, how many predatory bird species we have out of the 500 or so?
Our raptor species stands at 49 right now.
Okay, well, that's quite a lot.
That's quite a lot, yeah. But they all are very specific in what they hunt and where they hunt, where they live. You have those that eat fish, you have those that eat crabs, you have those that eat snails, you have those that eat locusts, you have those that eat snakes, rats. So it's all, and they're all important. Because which one of those things you want in abundance in your environment? Well, everything has to be controlled.
Exactly, we were speaking about it. Birds of this type, at the end of the day, we might not understand it if we just kind of look at it as laymen on the surface, right? But what they do controls populations of other animals, and even the most benign animals. I think in Australia, I can't remember if it's rabbits, so one of those Pacific islands where rabbits or cats went out of control.
Both rabbits and cats.
Well, exactly. I think they tried to use one to control the other, and it didn't really work. Certain areas have issues with alligators or herbivores because agriculture gets affected.
Iguanas in Florida, a big problem.
Right.
So whenever things go out of whack, out of balance, and are out of place, they create problems. Always.
These birds, so you'll find them as well in South America, not just in Trinidad?
Yeah.
Will they, I guess you could say, will their range include crossing the seas at times, or more or less our population? They are small, so I don't know if they have that range.
They're not migratory.
Right.
They can sometimes literally hop on a wing or follow another strange bird and end up in a totally different country area, but they're not usually migratory. So our population here is our population, but bear in mind that Venezuela is only 7 miles away from the closest point. They can be, and that's the reason why we don't have many endemic birds, because while we have shifted away from the main continent, the air bridge still works. So birds can come and go. So the genetic diversity still occurs quite easily.
Now, I mean, she's quite small. How is this a typical size for an adult?
Pretty much. She'll probably just get a little fluffier, as they say, as she matures. But yeah, that's size. The main thing is the agility achieved with their small body weight and their speed and their wingspan. She has quite a bit. You know, wingspan?
I think they're actually quicker on the ground than in the air.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, she looks as though she has quite a large wingspan. It's almost as though her body seems to be just a tad too small for the size of her wings, based on, you know, the relative dimensions of what other birds of prey looks like.
Yeah. So they're based on what they hunt. That would be with their body size and wingspan and so on. So her wings are a bit broader also than the normal falcons. That's because, again, it's not for speed. So it's like a wide-bodied plane is built more for cargo than a jet with its narrow, pointy, built for speed. So the peregrine falcon, which is a cousin, is built for speed.
Yes.
Okay, so fastest animal in the world also. She's more glide. She does a lot of gliding and so on. So the wings are broader.
A lot of
because
endurance.
She does a lot of hunting on the ground. So if she has to hunt, it would be on the ground. Scavenge on the ground. So she would hover, glide, just take the wings and just literally gently come down, pick up a frog, a mouse.
So they'll go after ground animals as well, right?
They'll go after ground stuff as well. Yeah.
And I think one of the things, it's a parallel example. When our dogs passed, the neighborhood cats started to roam more into our yard, and then we noticed, oh, there's a lot less pests. Right. So, and that's one of the things maybe we underestimate. It's not just the fact that they might control the bird population, right, on the island, but also they might control other pests and contribute to dealing with rats and mice and frogs and maybe even roaches if they just happen to stumble upon.
The web of biodiversity is quite intricate, the way it's woven together, and how one species that seemingly dominates would control, or, you know, like the apex predators.
Yeah.
But then the smallest thing is what will bring down the apex predator.
Right.
Okay. So you have the mighty lion controlling the forest and the this and the that, and a little tick bearing a disease is what could attach to the scrotum of Mr. King and bring him down.
Now, these birds, one of the things, of course, is I'm not necessarily too aware about what all of our hunters hunt. Right. But you mentioned before that in some cases people like to shoot predatory birds. They're bigger. I assume they're seen as more prestigious, right? Of course, we've seen that people go on safari, they want to hunt lions. I don't know why. I understand people who hunt for food. You'll kill one animal, you have food for a year. That makes sense.
Right.
You kill multiple animals just to have the trophies. That doesn't make sense to me. What are these yellow-headed caracaras interaction like with the population? Who I think you said most people might not even recognize one, when they see it flying in the sky.
Yeah. All the birds of prey. First of all, we call in the animals chicken hawk. So I already said, that hawk coming for my chicken. Well, folks, this is not a hawk. This is a falcon. All right, let's start off there. And unless your chicken is really tiny like that, it can't manage it. Okay?
Yeah.
Chickens, roosters, even a hen, a layer would mash this bird up.
Yeah, because one of the controversial aspects with cocks is cockfighting.
Right.
And when you think about the average size cock and you look at this bird is outweighed. This is like a featherweight, and the cock would be the heavyweight.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about something close to 10 pounds sometimes as opposed to 1 pound. Right there already. Aggressive nature meant to hurt, and it will even hurt people. I have a volunteer who I make fun of her constantly because sometimes she has seriously debilitating headaches, and it's sad, but to make her feel better, I just remind her to tell me again how you get these headaches. And it was at the foot of a chicken who hit her drop kick in her head.
Whoa.
So those guys can actually deliver. She had to go to the hospital. She's on drugs. Every once in a while she has these flare-ups. It's sad on her part, but I find a way to make fun of her with it, and it actually helps her to feel better. Yeah, to feel better with regards to it. So animals out there, when they build up speed and velocity, they can impact quite highly, and especially when it's a bigger one.
So one of the issues, of course, is people looking to protect their chickens, because and the whole term of chicken hawk, you were saying off air, this is not even really.
Yeah, it's used. That term is used quite loosely all over the world. Like, if you look up and you see a big bird in the sky, it's an eagle. We don't even have any eagles in Trinidad. And when we present some of our hawks, the chicks, it's an eagle. Because now you would have seen an eagle on the Shield and Marvel Comics and so on, and America's bird. So it's imprinted in your mind.
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to you is eagle. So that's why we want to use the education and imprint so much more in your mind, so now that you can decipher and determine and understand and come out of that realm of ignorance, thinking that everything is an eagle, everything is a hawk, or this or that or the other. That's why we try to bring these animals on, and education, it comes down to that.
Are there related birds also in Trinidad to the yellow-headed caracara, or is the species slightly unique? Because usually, you might find similar, not always though, right? You don't necessarily find big cats overlapping that much in regions and territories.
Right.
But are there similar birds like this who have similar types of, I guess you could say, feeding patterns or similar species?
Yeah, yep.
We have 2 types of caracaras in Trinidad, actually. We have this one, the yellow-headed caracara, and then we have the northern crested caracara. That one is a bit more uncommon. That one, the sightings only recently started in Trinidad.
Oh, okay.
At one point in time, there was a rare sighting, but over the period of years, they have been more and more common, but not as common as these guys.
Would those be more, as birds maybe migrate to Trinidad from the mainland?
Yeah, I would say so, because it wasn't here, it wasn't as common at one point.
Now, what parts of the country, because I don't assume it's literally everywhere, right? Or would it be everywhere? Because I know, of course, in the north you have mountains, you have forested area, parts of central, parts of south, there's more flat land, there's not a lot of cover, and with not a lot of cover, there'll be less probably prey animals to find potentially.
Well, they actually, they started off years ago, just sightings down south. Now they are being sighted all over the country. From south, it went to the Manzanilla coast, and at the east coast, the Manzanilla area.
Yeah.
And now, my first interaction with the bird happened probably 8 years ago in Point Lisas on Phoenix Park, I believe, a flare tower, a gas tower that was being repaired. So at the 45-foot marker on that tower, a pair of caracara made a nest. Eggs hatched and the babies were there full for everyone to see, especially, you know, you'll zoom in with your camera and so on. So we were called in, quite responsible of the company, and they were NGC, National Gas Company, to call us in because they didn't want anything bad to happen to these animals. So, you know, kudos to them for that conservation effort. So, silly me, of course, put on my harness and climbed up this flare tower, 45 feet.
You didn't know what bird you would have encountered at the time? Or you knew?
We knew.
Okay.
So I was excited to go and see this bird because it's a rare bird now found breeding. So it's the first record of it breeding here in Trinidad.
Right.
And I get a chance to go up and see the nest. And, you know, there's a nice ladder all the way up. But this tower that is supported by cables there in an open field, it has a way of sort of doing this when you're going up, you know, and everything looks a little different there. And then you get up there and you have these two angry parents circling, which I know, so something like this would come in handy. So we brought this for you just in case this guy got angry, right? So actually I did have my hard hat on because the parents, if they get angry, will come at your head, and that will be, you know, my lack of follicles there would be a problem. And the babies are there, and I'm just saying, please don't jump out of this nest. You know, they're looking at me. That's part of the fear because they're stepping back like, whoa, look at the size of this weird predator. But it was an amazing experience, and I determined, we took a lot of pictures and communicated with other people who were much more knowledgeable and determined the approximate age of the birds, and we determined when they would fledge. Because the contractor needed to do work and they needed to fire this thing up. But it was determined that they would have fledged before that actually happened.
So you didn't need to remove them?
Didn't have to remove them. But we came up with a contingency plan, which was to put a pole, a light pole, not too far away with a deck and a nest, and then relocate the babies there. But before we did that, make sure we got recordings of their voices. So we'd have actually put a speaker there and blared it loud so the parents would know, hey, we're not here now, we're over there 100 meters away on this nest.
Okay.
And once they go there and start feeding, we know we'd have succeeded.
It would have been an amplified voice so that they would have heard it further, right? Than they otherwise would have.
Right. But even with the normal song, because in the nest now, they would sit there quietly. Right. And the parents would have to actually visually, but with the sound, it alerts the parents. They remember. You can remove baby birds from the nest, raptors especially, and up to 2 months, 3 months later, put them back. Because the parents remember them. They remember their voice. Those are their babies. That's the amazing thing with them.
I mean, people underestimate the intelligence of animals, but one of the more interesting things to see on the internet these days is to see full-grown predators hugging the people that nursed them as children. And, you know, that was years ago, right? And, you know, the lion just jumps on you and hugs you and licks you, and you're like, oh, that's a human being. You're a braver man than I.
Yeah, that's a little bit deceptive.
It's a little bit deceptive.
Yeah. You know, you have to know it's very limited to certain species.
Right.
It's almost always, you know, people don't understand, almost always lions, because lions are like dogs.
They're social.
Very much. So you are the leader, and they will always accept you as such. That's how you're able to control them, as it were. Most of the time it's well-intentioned, so it works out. So they will remember you and so on. Try that with a jaguar or a leopard. It ain't going to work out so nice for you.
Right.
You know, so they're solitary, if not tiger, solitary creatures. I don't need you, I don't like you. They will even battle their own leaders, as it were, you know. So it's a difference. There's no pride of tigers. It's a pride of lions.
Of course.
Okay, so they don't stick together. So you make that mistake with the wrong animal.
Well, I don't think anybody in TNT is going to make that mistake, right? Unless they jump into the lion cage.
Well, we have lions and we do have tigers. So somebody might want to do a TikTok video and just end up on CNN.
I hope no one is that foolish. Now, with these caracaras, population-wise, is it that, getting a bit antsy, is it that the population, are they growing? Do they have any problems or issues? One of the questions always is, as urban development continues, you know, it might impact wild animal habitat space, and of course their population levels and their range, their free-ranging space available.
Right. I would say the population is what they call stable, and urbanization has not threatened this bird because of its brain.
So it could operate in an urban environment more or less fine?
We had one that we rescued years ago. We call him Ollie. Ollie meaning that he was actually oiled, but he was oiled in El Socorro.
Right.
By a dumpster where they had poorly discarded used oil. He found food there and he got into that. And while he looked quite normal like that, he just had a nice sheen on him. But it was so heavy, right, from cooking oil, that he could not fly.
Right.
So that means now he would have been susceptible to dogs, cats, little pesky children and stuff like that, you know. So we had to rehabilitate him and clean him for oil, like we do with an oil bird from the oil spill.
Yeah.
And then went back and released him in the area.
So quick question to close up. Of course, there's always the fears that mothers might have of predatory birds and young children. Birds like this, though, young children might look a little too big for them to want to take on.
Wait, no, it's not on the. We have no birds
in TNT.
There are no birds anywhere in the world. Even when you see the golden eagles grabbing the mountain sheep and so on and flinging them off the cliff, there's no records of these birds attacking and harming people in the same way. The worst they would harm you is that they literally go at your head if you're in their territory to chase you away.
Right.
Okay. And that's only certain special birds that were actually raised around people. Or if you did like me and climbed up the tower and threatening the nest, they would go after you. So tree climbers, up to yesterday I met a tree climber who told me his job, he would have to wear a hard hat because the birds do come at you.
So good safety tip, if there's an aggressive bird for whatever reason, just note it's going to come for your head.
On your hard hat.
But of course, even better, call people like yourselves from the wildlife conservation to try to extricate the bird from a human environment.
Well, if we could, or many times it's just waiting for the nesting period to be over, and then they move on with their babies. So we're environmentalists. We don't just care about the birds and the bees, we care about the humans as well. Of course. We all have to live together in harmony. So we have to find a way to make it work.
Well, I mean, folks, you learn something new every day. I was not aware of how many predatory species or just how many birds we had on the island, so that's actually cool. I also think something that could help our tourism products, something that's important to know.
Yeah, we're pushing towards that 500 milestone. I can't wait. I keep encouraging birders out there. Find birds, find birds. When we get to 500, that's going to be a milestone in terms of marketing our tourism and ecotourism product here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, that's a whole other conversation, but we've run out of time on that one. I'm a little bit in tourism, so I have some pessimism there. But hopefully, I could see you get that to fruition. But folks, I want to thank the Wildlife Conservation from El Socorro Center and what's her name again?
Claxton.
Claxton. That's not a typical girl's name, but I guess my friend, my lady, have a good day to you and a good day to two of you.
Thank you, and I'll leave you with this hard hat. So when you come birding with us on our
you're scaring me. I don't know why I need this. Okay, but folks, this is AM Prime bringing the wild to you. But we have to close out the show now. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be right back. But in half an hour, you'll see me again on Talking Points. So stay tuned for that and more on WSN, your content capital. Bye-bye for now.